Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today, we're going to continue talking about creative writing, specifically about writing a memoir. So, for my students from Myanmar, today in class, we talked about different ways that we can engage the audience, ways that we can open our memoir. And we talked about several different strategies for doing that. So, let's take a moment and go over each strategy right now.
So, when we talk about opening a memoir, we can use some of the strategies that we also use in academic writing, like using dialogue or asking a question to our reader. But there are some unique approaches that we can take with narrative text. So, first of all, we can start in the middle of the action. We can introduce a major theme or topic. We can flash back to an earlier time. We can use a prologue, or we can hint at some future action. And we can provide a vivid description. So let's look at each one. So if we start in the middle of the action, we're starting directly in the middle of the story, or we're starting in the middle of a dramatic event or moment. When I think of this, I think of that novel Shantaram. It starts where the main character is in an Indian prison. And it's right there. It's right in the middle of the action. So right from the start, I'm engaged. Here, the author says, the car skidded across the icy road, spinning out of control as my hands gripped the steering wheel. I barely had time to react before the sound of crunching metal filled my ears. This was not how I expected my first day on the job to end. So when I read that, first of all, I'm drawn in by the action, but also I have so many questions. What happened before this? What was his first day on the job like? What job does he have? What's his boss going to say? Is he working now? So there are a lot of questions I have, and that's what we want a good introduction to do. We want it to draw the reader in. We can also introduce a major theme. So here, the author introduces the theme of freedom. For as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with the idea of freedom, whether it was escaping the confines of my small town or breaking free from the expectations of others. I was always searching for a way out. This is the story of how I finally found it. A flashback. So we can begin with a memory, but it should provide context for the whole story. As I stared at the empty room that used to be my mother's, a memory from years ago surfaced. I was 7, sitting on the kitchen floor, watching her carefully measure out ingredients for a cake, her hands moving with a precision that mesmerized me. I didn't know it then, but that would be one of the last peaceful moments we shared. So I have more questions. I want to know, why is this the last peaceful moment? Did something happen? Is he fighting with his mother? Did his mother get sick? What possibly could have changed? So that's a great way to start the story, to draw your reader in by flashing back to an earlier time. When you foreshadow events or you create a prologue, you are hinting at something that is going to happen in the text. The important thing here is that you don't want to give everything away in your introduction. You want to leave the reader with some questions so that they're as engaged as possible when they finish your introduction. They want to continue reading. So here the author says, it was a sunny afternoon in June when I first realized something was wrong. The warmth of the sun on my face was a sharp contrast to the cold knot forming in my stomach. As I watched my daughter play in the garden, I had no idea that our lives were about to be turned upside down. But looking back, I can see that that day was the beginning of everything. So right away, I've got a lot of questions. Okay, so he tells us something was wrong. There's a cold knot forming in his stomach, so he's obviously very nervous. Here he says, our lives are about to be turned upside down. So the author's going to tell me a story about some major event, something that happened that really upended his entire life. I want to know what that is. So I'm going to keep reading. He says here, it was the beginning of everything. Well, what is everything? Everything good? Everything bad? I don't know. Provide a vivid description. So you can start with a description of a person, place, or thing that's central to the story. In this example, the author is providing a description of the setting. The house stood at the edge of the forest, its weathered wood siding blending into the surrounding trees. Moss-covered stones lined the path to the front door, and the scent of damp earth hung in the air. Inside, the floorboards creaked with every step, and the walls were adorned with faded photographs, each one telling a story of the family that had lived here for generations. So there's a lot of great descriptive language in this introduction here. We see personification. We have these photographs that are telling stories. That's personification. We have a lot of sensory language. The floorboards creaked. The scent of the damp earth. He talks about faded photographs, right? So there's an appeal to our sense of sight or our visual senses. Weathered wood blending into the forest. That's another appeal to our sense of sight. So I think a lot of really great descriptive language in this opening. So whatever strategy you choose, you just want to remember that it should fit your memoir or your narrative, and it should draw the reader in. That's the most important thing, is we want an introduction that's going to draw our reader in.